Lore Together is proud to be part of the Boss Rush Games Network. Feel free to find out more at bossrushgames.com/network. Hi, I'm Safi.
And I'm Mystic.
And this is Lore Together. This is the podcast where a husband and wife team go over all the storytelling, world building, and characters of video games. Because that's what we like to do together. We lore together.
Yep, and this is episode 63.
Yay! And I got it on the first try. Guys, it's been like episodes since I got that on the first try. I had to trick my brain into undoing something.
Before we get into the episode, if you'd like to contact us, you can do that on Instagram or Twitter at LoreTogether, or through email at loretogether@gmail.com. And if you'd like to support this podcast, you can do that over on patreon.com/loretogether. We can pay a per episode pledge to get access to episodes early, as well as mini episodes, Q&As, and coming soon, our first chapter of the Unreal book series.
A book that we didn't realize we needed to read until the author literally offered Mystic to send over an extra copy of the sequel. And we were like, all right, we're down.
Technically, he sent over the first one.
Oh.
Book 2 is the prequel to book 1. Also, the chapters are out of order. They basically took both books and shuffled them together. So if you read every other chapter of one of the books,
yeah,
and then you read every other chapter of the second book,
yeah,
that's one book.
So how are we doing? Just so in case you're interested in our Patreon and supporting us, how are we doing it? Are we just doing it?
We're doing it the way the author told me to do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Including the flipping the two out of order chapters in one of the books.
This is some dedication that you don't understand that we have for these games, and we appreciate our patrons for supporting us. One of them posted in the Discord for Boss Rush Games.
Yes.
Basically stating thanks for us for appreciating the games because, the people who produce this work need attention, and we agree, and that's why we do this show, because it's a lot of hard work making a universe. Even if that universe might be flawed with their naming conventions, in my opinion, it's still a hard job. So let's get to it. I have no idea, Mystic, what you're covering this week. Once again,
another 2019 game, actually.
Ooh,
surprisingly,
nice. Is it another BAFTA nominee?
That I don't know. I didn't research into that aspect of it.
Okay,
it definitely was the game of the year for a lot of people.
Okay. I feel like I should know what this is now.
You do know what this is.
Okay, in a theory, but I just don't know right at this moment.
Take a guess.
2019? I don't know. That feels like a blur. That feels like a decade ago. It's not Disco Elysium. It's not. Is it an indie game?
No.
Okay, so it's a AAA game?
Well...
Or is it triple I?
I would say it's kind of hard to classify.
Okay.
These days, if it was published, I would say it was a AAA based on who the publisher would be.
Oh.
But back when this came out, they were under a different publisher.
You're just going to have to tell me because I'm drawing a blank, and I don't know if it's just because this molasses cookie I ate is in my neurons for somehow.
We're going to do The Outer Worlds.
Oh my gosh. You're just going to confuse future listeners now. You're right. I do know this game. And why am I so mad? I'm so mad I didn't guess this.
Developed by Obsidian Entertainment and published by Private Division, Obsidian Entertainment has since been bought by Microsoft.
Which Microsoft tends to meddle the least when it comes to those big names.
And we have some pedigree here, obviously. Tim Kaine and Leonard Boyarsky, two of the creators of the original Fallout, were creative leads on this game as well, which is a first-person action-adventure RPG.
Now, I never finished this game. I just kind of started it, and then it fell off for me, partly because I started late in 2019, and then 2020 was 2020.
Yeah.
But you can tell there's a lot of that same kind of like charm and humor in particular. It's a little Brechtian at points, but otherwise it's very much, you can tell an Obsidian
Yes.
It's Obsidian in character, I guess is a good way to put it.
As with pretty much most of the games we cover, we're going to get a little political here this episode.
Getting political. You guys are missing on the little cha-cha dance I'm doing in my chair as I do that.
And usually we have to dig a little bit through some layers before we get to the politics. The Outer Worlds kind of wears its politics on its sleeve.
Again, Brechtian. And for those of you who don't know theater, that basically means hitting you over the head of the hammer with the political themes in this game. They do not hide it.
Perhaps not as much as some other games we've covered, though, like Papers, Please or This War of Mine. Episode 34 if you want more on those two games, which just feel more and more...
more prescient? Yes. They're much more needed in this day and age. Absolutely. But those games are also very honest about being political, and they're not trying to make a joke of it. Like, there's funny parts of it, but it's kind of like we have to laugh so that way the audience is not going to be weeping at the end.
I don't know. This War of Mine, there's not a lot of humor there.
I did not play this War of Mine, so
That'll be a stream for
that.
Safi in the future.
What?
That'll be a stream in the future, I'm sure.
No, if everybody... Look, we've had enough streams where Safi ends up in tears. Do we really need more? But yeah,
right,
Papers, Please in particular is what I was thinking about. But
Yes.
you're right. Let's get into the Outer Worlds.
So, like Fallout, it is an alternate universe.
Yes.
Started with one pivot point in our history.
Which pivot point is this?
So in this case, we're going back to September 6th, 1901.
Yeah, they love going way, way back for what is considered like the point of no return in the timeline.
The Pan American Exposition is happening, and we're at the Temple of Music in Buffalo, New York, specifically.
Okay.
President William McKinley is in attendance, greeting the public against the recommendations of his secretary, George B. Cortelyou. Around 4:07 p.m. in our reality, a man named Leon Frank Czolgosz gets to the front of the line, and as McKinley is reaching out his hand, Czolgosz shoots him twice in the abdomen. One bullet ricochets off McKinley's button and lodges in his coat. The other pierces his stomach.
Yes, so this was our timeline, and this is why McKinley was like one of the...
He was the third one to be assassinated.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
But we're not even to the assassination yet. Czolgosz is dogpiled by a bunch of guys and beaten before McKinley puts a stop to it, and Leon is dragged out and arrested. McKinley slowly recovers until he suddenly worsens. Unbeknownst to his doctors, gangrene has set in his stomach and is poisoning him.
Oh.
He dies at 2:15 a.m. on September 14th. His vice president, Theodore Roosevelt, is sworn in the same day.
Now,
literally, Theodore Roosevelt was coming from like the Adirondack.
Oh wow!
And like getting a carriage like out of there, like out of the rural area, and like rushing.
Oh my
to
gosh.
civilization. Yeah.
Just to be like, we're gonna need you like right now, sir. You can't delay. That bear's gonna have to wait.
Yeah. Now, Roosevelt viewed big business as a necessary part of the American economy, but definitely was not a fan of the, quote, bad trusts that restrained trade and charged unfair prices.
So he's for free markets to the extreme. Well, not to the extreme per se.
No, he's not in favor of the.
Oh, I misunderstood what you were saying. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, he goes after those what he called unfair trust in businesses. He wielded the Sherman Antitrust Act of 1890 like his proverbial big stick.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, the Roosevelts in general were very much, they were not for the idea that corporations were going to help everything in the market.
Yeah, he brought 44 antitrust suits against massive monopolies and trusts, breaking up the Northern Securities Company, which was the largest railroad monopoly, and regulating Standard Oil, the largest oil company. For comparison, Presidents Benjamin Harrison, Grover Cleveland, and William McKinley combined only prosecuted 18 antitrust violators.
Antitrust violations very rarely go to suit. Usually is not anything that a president has their attention for. So essentially, Theodore Roosevelt just had a stick in his craw about this for a long time.
Yeah. So, knowing what you know about the Outer Worlds, what do you think didn't happen in 1901 in that universe?
McKinley did not die.
Roosevelt never became president, and the big trusts were never taken out, and in fact flourished, leading to a hyper-corporate, class-centric society dominated by the power of megacorporations and robber barons, which by the distant future have begun to colonize space, which would be hilarious if it was also not a bit too on the nose.
Yeah, guys, the revolution never happened. We're just all suffering here together. Yay.
Eventually, in the 21st century, the Earth Directorate is formed. This is a planet-wide government formed on Earth in the years following the Great War, of which we know nothing. It's literally on the wiki, it says the Great War. It goes, after the Great War, the Directorate was formed.
Intentionally vague, probably.
Probably, yeah. I mean, if you want to explain everything in the universe, you will be there forever.
Oh, yeah, believe me. For a while, when I was much younger, I thought that was necessary for building a world.
So this government was formed basically to regulate trade, arbitrate international, interstellar, and intercorporate disputes. Later in the century, the skip drive was invented, allowing ships to approach and skip past the speed of light.
Interesting.
No idea how it works beyond that. People do try to analyze the rise of the skip drive and the flourishing of the Earth Directorate with some conspiracy theories mixed in. You can find like people arguing in essentially emails and stuff.
Yeah.
I kind of ascribe to the idea that the war likely left the corporation severely weakened, and the directive used the invention of the skip drive to strengthen its hold over all these different conglomerates.
Right.
By the 23rd century, the Directorate is also responsible for cataloging and licensing of star systems to various corporations or corporate entities.
Interesting. Okay.
So 10 corporations, 5 major corporations and some of their subsidiaries, work together to create Halcyon Holdings Corporation to purchase rights to the whole system.
So they partnered together and became their own conglomerate in order.
Yes.
Yeah.
These companies are Universal Defense Logistics, ships, weapons, stuff like that. Their subsidiary is Spacer's Choice, which is equipment and supplies, and Hunters and Trackers Limited, which does hunting expeditions. That was a weird one.
Yeah, Spacer's Choice you're going to find a lot when you first get into the game.
Colway Pharmaceuticals and their subsidiary Anti-Cleos, which is med, chems, and beauty supplies.
Yes, you'll also see a lot of Anti-Cleos because that's where you get your basically one-up mushrooms.
Sappy has just the worst look on her face, like I just said that.
I've been doing a lot of farming in Stardew Valley. Mushrooms are kind of on the brain right now.
Rizzo's, which is foodstuffs. C&P, more foodstuffs. Monarch Stellar Industries, which has 2 subsidiaries, ARMS and Terra One Publications. Now, Monarch is where it gets interesting, and we'll circle back to them in a moment.
I feel like you kind of hear about them early on in the game. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It was not unusual for corporations or even individuals to purchase star systems.
Makes sense. People are starting to do that right now, guys, and be careful.
I mean, we're not really purchasing star systems, but like...
Dude, Firefly, you can't take the sky from me.
But Halcyon's remoteness meant that colonizing it would be an exorbitantly expensive effort.
Yes.
The corporation arranged for 2 ships to transport colonists to Halcyon, the Groundbreaker and the Hope, both made by Universal Defense Logistics. Mm-hmm. The Groundbreaker arrived on schedule, and the effort to colonize the system began on Terra 1, a small moon orbiting the gas giant Olympus.
Yeah, I do like that sci-fi is clinging on to the idea that, you know, it doesn't have to be a planet for you to live on and have life. It could be a moon. It could be even a floating meteor somewhere. It could be internal rather than external when it comes to the surface of whatever space body you're on. Yeah. You know, interesting stuff to think about.
The Halcyon Holdings corporate board had intended to completely terraform the moon, wiping out the local fauna and flora and replacing with plants and wildlife native to Earth.
That's called doing a colonialism. This is how you lose the dodos, guys.
However, the terraforming process unexpectedly caused the native species to mutate and grow to significantly larger sizes.
Do we have rodents of what is it called?
Rodents of unusual size, but
yes.
I don't remember if we'd have rodents on this or not.
Okay.
But rendering the fauna more dangerous and severely crippling the colonization effort.
This is the problem with playing with nature. Also, just to backtrack a bit, this reminds me that we went to so in Chicago, Adler Planetarium has this great thing of like Adler After Dark, because they understand they're the most adult of the museums on a museum campus in Chicago. Feel free to reach out to us on social media if you want an idea of what that's like. It's great. Visit Chicago. Anyway, so we had asked after a talk, like what's the best way to make sure that we finally get into space flight? And essentially one of the, I forget what his position was at the planetarium, but essentially he was helping with this talk of this guy who was talking about, the past space race, which include like Alan Shepard being the first man from the US to get into space and blah, 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 blah. And he basically said, you have to use so many resources to get together that you'll have to unify a good chunk of the planet and get everyone to essentially be willing to share and create together to get all these resources. Mystic's response was, what you're saying is we need to support organizations like the planetarium. That's all you have to say. Like, support the public knowledge of this. But it's interesting in this universe, it's the flip side of we have to make it profitable for anybody to even want to invest that many resources into spacefaring. So dystopian. I just wanted to mention that as briefly as I could.
Due to the hostile environment they had created, the board was forced to enact a hazard clause covering the entirety of Terra 1. Public notice of the clause's issuance was sent to everyone operating in Terra 1 and led to the evacuation of almost all corporations from the moon. However, one corporation took advantage of the chaos of the evacuation to exploit a legal loophole which allowed them to, as the last corporation remaining on the planet, acquire the planet from the board. This corporation, under the leadership of Sanjar Nandi and Graham Bryant, subsequently rebranded itself to Monarch Stellar Industries in line with the renaming of the planet to Monarch.
Unfortunately, I think of the Monarch from the Venture Brothers.
I've never seen that, so I wouldn't know.
What? Sorry. I just learned something about Mystic that's terribly disappointing. It's a great cartoon series. You should watch it.
The actions of MSI earned them the ire of the board, who retaliated by effectively placing the moon under indefinite embargo, refusing to allow legal transit either in or out. In addition, the board aggressively spread propaganda about Monarch to convince the rest of the population that it was both uninhabited and uninhabitable.
Okay, so they were like basically doing a sneaky corporate takeover where they were going to be there anyway, but they're telling everyone else, we're stuck here even though we claim this?
No, the board is the one who's doing the propaganda. Monarch is saying, we'll stay here, and this is ours now.
Yeah.
And Monarch actually, Sanjar Nandi is actually he's not as bad as all the other corporate heads are. He seems to actually want, like, some fair treatment for his employees and stuff.
Okay.
He's still there to make a buck, but
right.
He doesn't want people dying over it.
So he's kind of more on the spectrum between, like Blood Diamonds to, co-op, large co-op corporation where everybody has equal share in a company. This guy sounds like he's more on the end of like Costco on that spectrum.
Maybe.
Okay.
The board sets up Terra 2, the only other inhabitable planet in the system. There, the capital Byzantium is set up. Elsewhere on the planet, Spacer's Choice sets up in the Emerald Vale, and Anticleo plunks down in the Roseway Gardens. All these places are just full of monsters.
And there's a lot of Victorian sensibility in that naming as well.
Groundbreaker itself becomes a bit of a free port. They don't bow to the board, and they aren't owned by any of the corporations.
Okay.
They do play ball with them, toss ball specifically, and have a bit of a love-hate relationship with them. Toss ball is a weird game. We're not even sure what the rules entirely are, but there's like parts of the field are named for days of the week and stuff. It gets weird.
I'm not stepping into that whatsoever.
We don't do the sports ball.
Nope.
So the Groundbreaker is settled. Let's discuss its sister ship, the Hope. Hundreds of thousands of colonists were put into stasis for what was planned to be 10 years of travel. A small crew of 24 would stay awake to maintain and pilot the ship.
I hope they're getting paid really well to age 10 years more than everyone else.
After 9 years of travel via skip space, so 9/10 of the way there,
Yeah.
the Hope suffered a skip drive malfunction, rendering it incapable of faster than light travel.
Yikes.
With no way to fix the skip drive, the Hope would have to complete its journey with only its sublight engines, extending the travel time by an additional 26 years.
Yeah, that sounds about right when you're dealing with stuff that precise.
With only a year's supply of rations left, the ship's crew was fated to starve to death unless a source of food was found.
There have been sci-fi stories with this horror concept. I have a feeling I know what's going to happen next.
With the threat of starvation, the crew's relationships had begun to deteriorate. Donna Hunt, first mate and wife of the captain, unsuccessfully attempted to grow tomatoes aboard the ship to feed the crew. Around the same time, Frank Nolda, the ship's chief engineer, would begin to feed himself by cannibalizing colonists he brought out of stasis.
Yeah, that's exactly what I expected to hear have happened.
Frank would eventually confess this to Captain Hunt, hoping that he would support a plan to feed the ship's crew by cannibalizing the colonists. Rather than support Frank, the captain had him locked up in the ship's brig for his crimes.
Okay, he'd rather die than cannibalize the crew. That's fair.
Unfortunately, Frank's plan was gaining the support it needed from other members of the crew without the captain becoming aware. For example, the ship's medical officer, Alexei Volkov, was an early supporter of Frank's plan. He tried to help convince the captain by telling him that the plan made some sense. The crew did the math and deduced that they would need to eat tens of thousands of colonists if they wanted to survive the 26 years before reaching Halcyon, far less than the hundreds of thousands on board. It's a bit of a no-win scenario. I mean, let's be honest. People have resorted to cannibalism in times like this.
Yeah, no, this is essentially the space version of the Donner Party.
Yep, Donner Reed Party is probably the most famous, but there's certainly other ones in history. The soccer team that crashed in the Andes, this.
Oh, that was, and that's very different too, because the Donner Party literally was to the point of murder.
Yeah.
Whereas the plane crash you're talking about, that was eating people who were in the snow who were already passed away.
Yeah. No, but either way, either everybody dies or some people die. It's a no-win scenario.
It is absolutely a no-win scenario. This is when James T. Kirk comes in and he finds a side planet full of like a moss they can grow on the ship. And
I don't even know if that's an option for them though, because
I know. I'm sorry. I'm referencing Kobayashi Maru. Anyway, so no, you're right. They don't know, and if they want to get there as fast as possible, they really don't have the time to research it either.
Right.
And we should also get back to working on a tomato so you can make a caprese salad.
So, with starvation worsening, the crew took increasingly brash action, starting with a supporter freeing Frank Nolda from the brig. Sometime later, first mate Donna Hunt, desperate for food, actually ate a small piece of human flesh offered to her by Frank. Fueled by starvation, she found the human meat was delicious.
Oh, yeah. It's when you're that hungry, it's no going back. No going back once you finally do that.
Fearing that she would join the cannibals as starvation set further in, she elected to take her own life than choose between starvation or cannibalism.
So, here's where I'm a weird person. I've got a proposal, and I don't know if this is possible. Somebody at me if this is possible. What if you have the materials to be able to make people fake limbs, what if we just eat their arms and legs? They can live, but
if you have the ability to regrow a limb,
not regrow, give them fake limbs.
Oh. Yeah. I don't know.
I
would think if you have the ability to do cryonics or whatever they're in, that you would have some ability to do something equivalent to bioprinting. So you could actually just do what we're doing kind of now, but it's still a little too expensive, of lab-grown meat.
Yeah. No, yeah. we're working on that slowly but surely. Hopefully, in some time, that'll be more feasible for feeding people. I agree. In theory, you're right. But also,
I mean, I don't want to be eating people, but if it's
Right.
a choice between nobody surviving and a small percentage of the population that you're carrying over having to be sacrificed, that small percentage of the population is sacrificed if there's no other option.
right, if there's no other option, you're right. I personally think the other option is just eat people's limbs.
Yeah.
But I don't know the math on that. I just don't.
Now, if you're going to start adding me about who decides who dies, that's a totally different topic.
That's an ethical dilemma where that's exactly why you never win.
Right.
You can never truly justify killing whom you're going to eat. And that's one of the reasons why I could understand somebody being in Donna's case and deciding to deciding to basically nope your way out of it the only way you can think of.
Right.
Unfortunately.
With the captain's authority being undermined and the first mate now dead, the crew entered a state of open rebellion. In a bid to prevent further harm to the remaining colonists, Hunt locked down parts of the ship and sealed access to the hibernation storage base, including the ship's bridge where he and his navigator, Rezi Torrega, resided.
Wow. So how are they supposed to continue the ship, though, with no calories to consume? That's fair. They're going to
The ship does have a sort of autopilot, but there's no way for them to resurrect anybody. We'll
Right.
get there.
You would have to hope you would land to some place where they would get resurrected.
Yeah. So it didn't take long before Captain Hunt and Torrega could hear Frank and his supporters drilling to open the sealed door to the hibernation storage. And when the drill stopped, they feared it was because Frank had gotten in. Hunt left the bridge for a final confrontation with Frank. Torrega stayed behind, eventually succumbing to starvation. There is no concrete record of what happened during Hunt and Frank's confrontation. It can be assumed that Hunt killed Frank and any remaining cannibals, then succumbed to starvation. There is no record of the final moments of the crew. However, the outcome for the colonists was being trapped in stasis with no one to wake them.
Right. So, yeah, that's exactly what you're hoping. You're hoping that you point the ship in the right direction and someone else will wake them up.
Yeah. The Hope reached Halcyon in 2320, 25 years later than planned.
Okay.
The Halcyon Holdings Corporate Board discovered the ship adrift, but the colonists had spent so much time in stasis that they could not be safely revived. Basically, you end up with soup.
Yeah.
The board decided to hide the ship's discovery for fear of the public outcry to help the colonists, moving the Hope into orbit of the ice planet Typhon, intent on abandoning the derelict ship indefinitely.
So there's no way to revive any of these people at this point. Essentially, Hunt's decision murdered all of them because he wasn't willing to murder some of them.
At this point, yes.
At this point, yes.
However,
Unless you just keep them in stasis until you find a solution, however long that may be.
So during this time, Phineas Wells is a scientist working for the board, and he learned about the fate of the Hope, becoming frustrated that nothing was being done to save the colonists. Confident that with research and experimentation he could devise a way to safely revive the colonists, he sought consent from his superiors to begin the needed research on long-term hibernation, but was denied.
There's no profit in it. You've already got enough people you need to do all the spacefaring business stuff that you want to do.
Yeah. Undeterred, he decided to begin researching on his own without the board's knowledge, secretly moving hibernating colonists from the Hope to bring to his lab to experiment on.
Ah, yes.
Most of them do not survive, but that is the nature of experimentation on this type of thing.
And they were going to be doomed to die anyway, so this point, he's essentially trying to fix Hunt's mistake.
Well, he's essentially going to fix a lot of mistakes.
There's a ton of mistakes. I think there's a mistake in, as much as it pains me to say it, not sacrificing at least some of the body parts,
right,
at minimum, of these colonists to get the minimum amount of calories you need in order to survive and get the ship where it needs to go.
It actually reminds me, if you've ever read The Martian, I don't know if they did this in the movie, but there is a point where they're supposed to go around Earth spoilers for a book. I recommend the book and the movie both. But they have to go around Earth and pick up this supply capsule before they go back to Mars.
Right. Exactly.
There's a chance they won't get it. And so they literally vote that the youngest crew member
Yeah.
and the smallest crew member is kind of like the designated survivor. Everyone else will kill themselves, and she will have food to make it back home still.
Oh, that is so ghoulish. That is so ghoulish. They do not talk about that in the movie. I think the movie, they were trying to make it a little bit more feel good. So there's certain things that are mentioned in the book.
Yeah.
From what you've mentioned to me that definitely did not happen in the movie, including like clarifying what the man left on Mars said to everyone to make them like wince. It's kind of just alluded
I
to.
think he
being
just says boobies, but anyway. So when the board discovers his operations, they brand him a murderer and a criminal.
Oh, Phineas?
Yeah.
He's wait. So he's a murderer because
The people he's experimenting on are dying. And
yeah.
They're propagandizing.
Yeah.
Despite this, Wells continues his research while evading the authorities.
Oh, that's difficult.
Literally, the game starts in 2355, 35 years after the Hope arrives and was abandoned. Phineas has been at work. He's got a heck of a rap sheet now.
Oh, I'm sure.
The crimes he is wanted for include sedition, forgery, conspiracy to commit conspiracy, unlicensed medical practice, and destruction of board property.
Nice.
But he has succeeded in reviving one person. The Stranger. That's us.
Yes.
Maybe the same person from the Mist series. Who knows?
Oh my gosh, what a life. What a life.
Wouldn't that be funny?
Oh my gosh.
The goal of the game, Phineas needs more of the chemicals he used to revive us to bring back the rest of the colonists from hibernation. And so we set off. We get our own ship, meet a great selection of companions from all different walks of life, and save the colony, or not. The game is very choice-based. You can be a bootlicker for the board or fight for the downtrodden and forgotten.
Yep.
It's a bit hard to say what the actual canon ending is, in my opinion. I mean, I assume that it's going to be you save everybody and all that stuff.
Right.
The world is pretty fascinating, though, and we do learn a bit about how these people even think. For example, there's a heavy dose of religion in this game, but they are both completely atheistic.
Humanistic or atheistic?
Atheistic. I'm going to say atheistic because they both kind of approach the universe as a thing, but it's not a living thing.
Okay.
Yeah. So the Order of Scientific Inquiry, or Scientism, is one of the two main religious groups in Halcyon system and is the official religion of the corporations.
Okay, already suspicious.
Its believers are called scienticians. Scientism instills the mindset that everyone is right where they are meant to be, and straying from one's job or place in life is tantamount to heresy.
Oh, no.
There
are
are several tenets. Would you like to hear them?
I don't think I want to.
You're still going to.
Oh, no.
Survival of the fittest. Nature abhors equality. The strong survive, and the weak perish for the betterment of the whole.
Nature abhors equality. That's not... No, that's... What?
Determinism. No. We are all molecular machines. The body is a collection of atoms. The mind is a consequence of chemical reactions. Our lives are therefore predestined along a path that is only visible in retrospect.
This is so depressing.
Empiricism. The only real knowledge is that which we can observe, quantify, and measure for ourselves. Scientific experimentation is the only way to understand the elaborate blueprint of the universe.
But if the blueprint of the universe is so elaborate, how do you know that you're supposed to be where you're supposed to be? Who's determined that?
Stoicism. Reason, not emotion, is the seat of morality.
That's not Stoicism! Sorry.
Wisdom means accepting the vicissitudes of life with grace and dignity.
No, that's not Stoicism. Stoicism is about an even-keeled temperament to the best of your ability. Dude, this is not Stoicism.
Teleological order. All things have a reason for existing and a purpose to fulfill. The purpose of humanity is to eventually unlock and solve the universal equation.
What is the universal equation?
I think that's the blueprint of the universe.
I hate this religion so much.
Patronage of science. The purpose of humanity is realized through scientific achievement. Advancements in science and technology bring humanity closer to fulfilling its role in the cosmos.
I want to hurl. So you basically took
Some
everything.
of these don't sound terrible, but as a whole, they all sound terrible.
You took the amazing wonder and extraordinary ability to expand the mind in science, and you made it Calvinism. I'm just not here for it.
Countering them are the philosophists. Philosophists seek to maintain a natural flow with the universe. At the core of philosophism is the belief that the universe was created in an organic and natural way without any specific purpose. Two of the most important concepts of philosophism are the awakening and the eternal truth.
All right, let's hear this, and I'll probably still be mad at it.
The eternal truth is the ability to be part of the consciousness of the cosmos and to fulfill the role that the universe has given people in an eternal quest to understand itself. Coming to understanding and being part of that journey is what makes any being divine.
That's not too bad. I kind of like that.
The awakening is the point of no return. It is the moment when the mind opens to the eternal truth. It is the experience that any philosophist goes through and that can come from any different vital experiences, such as witnessing the death of a loved one.
But that feels like it's when you realize what you want for yourself in the rest of your life. Like it feels like an epiphany to the self.
You can see why the board is not a fan of it.
Oh, yeah. You get to decide what you want to do. So, a couple things. The philosophists, of course, more aligned to them. The idea that you to determine what you want to do with your life, and there's nothing wrong with being who you are, and there isn't anything that's predetermined, because why? But here's the problem that I've had this discussion years and years ago with people. When you're doing something as fraught as trying to live in space, there comes a point where everybody kind of has to toe the line in order to live.
Yeah.
Because it's not like living on Earth. Well, the air is plentiful, as long as you don't pollute it too much. And the water is drinkable, as long as you're not by the sea and you don't pollute it too much. And the land will provide you some sort of sustenance. And the animals will be there, again, as long as you don't pollute it or overfish or overhunt or whatever. Within certain parameters, it is a lot easier to live on Earth than it is going to be anywhere else, even if you get the best technology ever. So you kind of have to have a bit of a hard determinist kick to maintain order in a science colony. I don't necessarily agree with the idea that it should be a religion. And I don't necessarily agree with the idea that a corporation should be supporting such a venture. But it's something like in the kind of writing I'm doing right now, I've had to think about as well. There has to be some sort of societal pressure to always be contributing to the success of the colony, because it is so much more fraught to be living in space. You can't just be hanging out hoping that things work.
Right.
You need to always be constantly giving something back to society as a whole in order to make sure that the air continues to filter and stay, that, you know, that the barriers between you and the harsh outside cosmos don't come in and destroy you, that you are able to maintain food. It is so much harder. You can't just like forage and frolic and hope for the best.
I think at the core, I think that might be the problem with philosophism, but I think in practice, I think it does have some of the things you're talking about.
And having played what little I have of the game previously, I will say that the idea that it doesn't seem like that they need to be as stringent as what my understanding of space faring would be.
Because the planets have been terraformed or are somewhat survivable already. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. They've gotten to the point where they can forage and frolic within a very short parameters. They still have to do a lot, but
using religion to instill loyalty to the corporations is evil and self-serving. And in another even worse example of comically evil corporations or comically evil, The board is trying to push forward with the Lifetime Employment Program, which is supposedly to save humanity, but is in fact there to allow the upper elite in Byzantium to be able to hoard the resources while most of the rest of the colonies suffer from lack of workers.
I am so not surprised.
They plan to use the Hope, jettison the still hibernating colonists, and use the now empty ship to put most of the already living colonists into cryosleep to be awakened later when needed, basically indentured servitude. There is no true happy ending to this game. If you side with the board, the people obey as they are taught. If you side with Phineas, they do better, but life is hard and many, many still die.
Yeah. It's about principles at that point.
Yes. Also, there's been no contact with Earth. A ship sent back to Earth disappeared, and the fate of the whole colony is up to us, the stranger. In fact, you might even be made leader of the colony, depending on choices.
Oh, wow.
So, now, we will eventually be back to this series. They have already said they're doing a sequel,
Okay.
and we didn't even cover the DLCs on the asteroid Gorgon or the station at Eridranos. So we have options for future episodes. We didn't even touch any of the companions. There's stuff to go into.
It's a pretty deep game. It's got a lot of lore going on.
Yeah, and even though the sequel will apparently be set in a new system with a new crew, that doesn't mean we won't find out a lot more lore to explore about this universe.
Yeah. And they definitely gave it a rich tapestry with that kind of history. I mean, what a horror show. Dude. Wow. I'm so mad. But, like, I'm more disappointed than mad, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah. It's basically Fallout in space.
It is exactly Fallout in space. Yeah.
I mean, that is very reductive, but...
Well, I'll say it like
it shares
it's Fallout New Vegas in space because it has a lot of that. It doesn't matter who you side with. It's all very messy anyway. And Fallout New Vegas definitely does that. They definitely do there's not really a good version of this ending. It just ends.
Yeah.
You know? And I can respect that. So. And also I know this is a game I can play without feeling like I'm going to die and make everything boring. So yay!
Yeah, I mean, we didn't even touch on any of the actual story in the game, like what we do in Emerald Vale, or the fact that you literally don't even own your own gravesite. You rent it.
Oh, so that's actually a thing on Earth. Did you know that?
Oh, boy.
No. It's like there's literally places in the world, and it's not even an evil corporation thing. It's just a different idea of, like, death and dying and passing, where you honor the dead by you only give them a space for a while, and then you move the remains elsewhere so that someone else can celebrate the life of their most recent passed away person. It feels ghoulish to us here, but there are places in the world, and there were parts of America that did used to do that, where basically your remains would be in a box, and then after a year or two, they'd push you to the back and then put someone else's remains in front for a while.
Okay.
It's a thing. It's now, I think I remember seeing what you're talking about, and it's a little different.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Either way,
yeah.
The universe is fun to play in, but I wouldn't want to live there.
It's definitely fun to mess up. It's fun to
and
piss
we'll do
off
that,
certain people.
And
yeah.
we'll do that next stream after this episode releases.
Yeah. And if you'd like to catch our streams, we're still playing Skies of Arcadia.
Yep.
When will the Barbershop Quartet get back together? You got to watch to find out.
I do not want to find out because I don't want to do the voices for it.
All right.
We will catch you guys next time. Thank you for listening.
Yes, thanks so much. Catch you next time. Bye.
Bye.